Hi, this is Casey Demmett, and this is my Talking to the Text. Chapter 2, Language Rich Classroom. On page 21, it's stated that academic language is not usually learned outside of the classroom setting. This actually really surprised me because I thought most of the language would be learned outside of the classroom because everything in America is mainly in English, and I always thought that real-world situations were the best way to learn. And then on page 22, it made me realize that we take a lot of things for granted since English is our primary language. I never thought about how many non-concept words we use and see daily. I got this because in the text it says, but the non-content specific words that carry enough impact as to make academic reading incomprehensible. Then on page 25, it states that on average only 3.6 minutes per day were spent with the informational text. This really surprised me because it seemed like when I was in school, we used a lot more than just 3.6 minutes of reading. We would read almost about 20 minutes a day on ourselves, and then that's not even including what we would read actually from textbooks or from reading papers. On page 26, it talks about how families should read together. I really like this idea because it's a great bonding activity for the parents and kids. And if the kids see their parents reading, they're more likely to read as well. And then in chapter 3, the language rich classroom. So on page 44, it states that yet content classrooms like science and social studies often contain some of the best opportunities for language acquisition. And this makes sense because you do a lot of reading in these subjects, so I thought that would be the best way for students to learn. Then on page 46, it states, ask students to underline 50 words that were significant to understanding the passage. I also thought this was a great way to teach summary, so you can teach them both found poems and summaries. On page 47, it states, once students have read the text, the activity facilitates a review of the text and asks students to analyze the words and their significance to the main point of the passage. The final product makes it clear to teachers whether students understand what they've read. I thought this is a fun and engagement assessment, so I really like this. It also helps students further their understanding. On page 48, it says, after students have finished reading, assign a historical figure to scientific object on which to write an I am poem. I used to do these a lot in school, and I really enjoyed it. I remember in 3rd grade, we had our parents come in to actually read our I am poems out loud. And also, I thought this was a really great way to help students with vocabulary. Then in chapter 4, in part of the language rich classroom, on page 87, I had a question. In the text, it says, many of them feeling that they were unfair to English language learners and others feeling that they were impractical. And I wanted to ask, how can we make this more fair for the students and make them feel more practical? On page 89, it talks about the rippling question. To me, this makes sense. I just never thought of it like that. And I'm talking about where it says, when big questions that aim to engage higher order thinking are asked of the whole class, it's often the students who speak only English will raise their hands first. In fact, frequently, it's only these students who will raise their hands. On page 90, it says, the pebble represents the question, first targeted to each individual student responding, and then progressing outward towards small groups, and then finally engaging the whole class. So our questioning should be framed in 3 outwardly moving steps. I love this because I thought this was a great and easy way of thinking about it. On page 91, I had another question. In the text, it says, providing an opportunity is the second step for sharing individual reflections in pairs or small groups, gives ELLs an opportunity to be successful in expressing their ideas first in a low-risk setting. My question was, what do you do if they don't share their thoughts, though? I figured it would not really benefit them if they're not sharing, and how can you help persuade them to share? Moving on, in the total participation techniques, chapter 9, page 140, it states, formative assessment requires that teachers constantly assess and respond to the feedback during these assessments while they are teaching. I like this because a lot of times teachers just grade papers and offer no feedback, and you do not know how to fix it for the next time. I find this really common, especially in college, where teachers are just given their grades and they're not really telling us how to fix it. On page 142, it states, but also allow you to affect and further develop what students know by significantly targeting what they need. And this made me think of other teachers I've seen use this on the first day of class to see what everyone knows and what we need to work on. I made a connection to my SPED 311 class because the first thing we had to do was take a pretest, and then at the very end we're going to do that same pretest, and he'll see what all we learned and what we didn't really learn. On page 143, it states, with those that could not produce a complete work, it was wonderful to find pieces of their work and validate their journey. It was like the wall where everybody was welcome. I really like this because this was perfect for ELL students because it's less stressful for them and it doesn't make them feel like they're on the spot in front of the class. Then on page 144, it says, keep records of student progress on a checklist that has each of your students' names with enough space to jot down notes regarding individual progress or concern. I like this because it's also useful if a student needs an IEP or anything similar. We learned this in my SPED 311 class, how you have to keep notes on all your students just in case it's ever needed. Lastly, chapter 10. On page 148, it says, let's instead use multiple ways of giving students opportunities to demonstrate the depth of their cognitive abilities. I love this because this is the type of teaching that really helps students learn the information. When they're able to use their creativity, they're more likely to remember that topic a lot longer. Then on page 150, it says, wow, that is creative, or you made an interesting point. Good thinking. I love this because students of all ages thrive off positive attention and compliments. It can change their whole mood for the whole day. On page 142, it says, trust is essential for a TPT conductive environment. Students are being asked to take risks, and they need to know what they would say will be valued. I love this because all of my favorite teachers were ones that I trusted. Having a teacher you don't trust does not make it fun, and it's harder to learn in that class. On page 153, it says, Miss Richards is always inviting kids to eat lunch with her. The kids know we talk about them and that we care. They are really comfortable because they know that we're here for them. When students know that you care for them, they're more likely to trust you. This reminded me of my 10th grade English teacher. She allowed kids to eat with her, and everyone trusted her with personal advice. And I also really liked how in that quote it says, we're here for them. Thank you.